Hello everybody and welcome to Module 2 Vocabulary. I want to start out by saying welcome and by giving you an update. As if you're listening to this, you know that I'm not there today, and that means that we're making some changes to the schedule. As you saw in your email, the 3rd, which is today, was supposed to be a class discussion and a demonstration for understanding by myself. However, I'm not there. So this is the class discussion / the lecture, and then we're going to switch things around a little bit. Instead of the 5th being in class with a class demonstration by you, it will be online with your YouTube video being due and the quiz. Then on the 10th, we will meet in class, and I will do a class demonstration for you, and then we'll work out when you need to do yours. So revisit the email that I sent to get all of those dates straight in your head, but here they are one more time. Today, we were supposed to be in class, but instead we're online, and this is the class discussion, sort of. And online. The 5th will be online, and you will have your YouTube video due for Module 2 Vocabulary, as well as a quiz. The 5th will be the demonstrations. The demonstration by me. We will meet in class on the 10th with a demonstration by me, and then we will talk about when you need to do your demonstrations. All right, so let's get started. Vocabulary 2. Vocabulary Module 2. Here's your first slide. Let's erase that. Okay, this is Chapter 7 Vocabulary, like I said. Let's get started. So how do students learn word meaning? What I need you to do is I need you to stop and think for just a minute before I move on to the next slide. And I want you to think about, how do students learn word meaning? What do you remember from your book about how students learn word meaning? Hopefully you're going to be able to come up with a few of these. There's 4 ways, and I'm going to move on, but hopefully you came up with some of these. Here are 3 of them. Through immersion in an environment rich with words. What does that mean? That means there's word walls. That means that there's lots of books. That means teachers talking about words, students talking about words. Words are important, and everybody's interested in words. So children are immersed. You know what immersion is, when something's completely surrounded by something else. So an environment that's immersed in words. They also learn through independent reading. Now, students learn a lot of words through their independent reading, and we need to give them opportunity to read independently. They learn through read-alouds. Now, you've been in my class long enough now to know how much I love a good read-aloud. But read-alouds aren't just for fun. Read-alouds are also to increase the vocabulary of the students. And I'm going to read books and use them in my lessons to increase vocabulary and help students to learn words. The next one, number 4, students learn words through explicit vocabulary instruction. That means, where have you heard that before? Explicit vocabulary or explicit instruction. You should recall that you heard that in the phonemic awareness and phonics module, that explicit instruction was important. Well, students learn words through explicit vocabulary instruction, and we're going to talk about what that instruction looks like a few slides over. So, here are some important tidbits, some things that you need to know. Number 1, vocabulary knowledge equals more capable readers. In other words, the more vocabulary that my students know, the more capable readers they are. I've got to stay on top of it. Number 2, less capable readers experience what is called the Matthew effect. Now, you read about that in your chapter, but let me talk to you about the Matthew effect for just a minute. The Matthew effect basically says that if two children start kindergarten at the same time, one who is a less capable reader or knows less words, less vocabulary, two, the second child who knows vocabulary, then the gap between those two children, whatever that gap is going to get wider and wider apart. The children who are less capable are going to get further behind. The children who are more capable are going to get further ahead. And why is that? Because what happens is children come to start kindergarten. Maybe they don't get the intervention that they need. The child who already has a good foundation grows, and the child who doesn't have a foundation may grow just a bit, but they don't grow to the level that where they catch up. So where they started behind, now the more experienced student has gained more than they've gained. So they tend to fall further and further behind. And then most words are learned incidentally through reading and conversation. So good teachers recognize that students need to be reading and that they need conversation in order to grow, because most words are learned incidentally, because they pay attention to words as they read when they're taught to do that. So this next slide asks us this question: just how important is conversation? Now there's a lot of words on this slide. Don't want you to get overwhelmed with them. I just want you to listen to what I'm telling you. Read this over, but listen to what I'm talking about. Hart and Risley in 1995 did a study, and it was a 2.5-year study. They looked at families, from professional families, working families, low socioeconomic families. And here are some results of the study that they found. By age 3, the spoken vocabularies recorded for the children of the professional families were larger than those recorded from the parents of the low socioeconomic families. Now listen to that. That means that the 3-year-old, this is what was recorded, the vocabulary that the 3-year-old used in a professional family was greater than the vocabulary used by the parents of those in a low socioeconomic status. Wow, that's huge, and it should make us pause and think for a minute about why that would be the case. Well, children from talkative, college-educated, professional parents heard 48 million words, while children from low socioeconomic families only heard 13 million words by the age of 4. That is a huge, huge gap. And it explains a lot of times why children from poverty come to school and they're already behind, because children from those college-educated professional families are hearing many more words. Vocabularies of children in poverty usually began and stayed small or of poor quality. They weren't using words that expanded. They weren't using words that made sense. Now, here's where we get into what happens when they get to school. Now, all of this has been before age 3 and before age 4. So very young. But when they get to school, the relationship between the total amount of parents that talked, parent talk that a child heard, and the child's vocabulary size was 0.6. Now, what in the world does that mean? A perfect correlation is a 1. I can say, because this happened, this is going to happen. That correlation between two things, that perfect correlation where I can say every time this is going to happen, is a 1. Well, this is saying a 0.6 correlation. So more than half of the time, what a child heard from their parent and their vocabulary size was more than half of the time there was a relationship there. But listen to this next one. The relationship between extra talk, above and beyond business talk. Now, what's business talk? Business talk is brush your teeth, go to your room, sit down, be quiet. That's business talk. So we're talking about extra talk above that, where there's conversation going on. How was your day? What do you think about that? Talk to me about what you believe to be true. The relationship between that extra talk and IQ was a 0.78. That is more than 3/4. Almost perfect. Very close. I can predict if the parent provides extra talk to their children, then they're going to have a higher IQ. That's very, very high. All variation in outcomes between all the families, anything that didn't line up, can be explained by the amount of talking in the family that the babies heard before the age of 3. If you have a young child in your home, what you should be saying to yourself right now is, I better be talking. Now, children don't start talking until they're over into being 1 year old, and then they're saying one word. And then at age 2, they're starting to put words together and make simple sentences. But all of this is what they heard before the age of 3. The relationship between extra talk before age 3 was a 0.77 correlation on the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test. It correlated with their vocabulary at age 9 in 3rd grade. Extra talk correlated with vocabulary in age 9. Their reading comprehension in age 9. Vocabulary use at age 3 could be correlated with reading comprehension scores in 3rd grade. Wow. That should make us recognize the value of conversation with young children. Now, what do we do when children come to school and they don't have the conversation that they need? We talk. We spend time talking to these children. All right, so here's some key points. What are we going to do? Teachers have to recognize the impact, I said that, and we've got to support vocabulary growth. And children who know fewer words, we've got to help them get there. So how can I do that as a teacher? How can I as a teacher expand vocabulary? I can teach specific words, I can teach word learning strategies, and I can foster interest in word learning. We're going to talk about all of these. We're going to start out with what a teacher can do to expand vocabulary, and we're going to start out with teaching specific words. Okay. You can look in your book on page 219. This little study by Beck McEwen, well, not a little study, it's a big study between Beck McEwen and Kukan, that was talking about teaching specific words. How do I, this should answer the question, how do I select words that I teach? A lot of times we get a textbook, or we get a reading textbook, which is called a BASIL, a commercialized packaged reading program, and they've picked out the vocabulary from a story. Well, the problem with that is they don't know the children sitting in front of you. So you've got to be able to look at that story, and you've got to be able to choose the words that are appropriate to that. So Beck came up with these 3 tiers of words that children know. There's basic words. Basic words rarely require instruction. Basic words are playground words, words that are common words. And then there's academic words. These are the kinds of words that teachers need to spend the most time teaching. These are academic words, words that their students are going to see in books and in print. So we've got to spend some time teaching them the vocabulary of these words. And then there's specialized words. These are words that are mostly in content areas. They're words that children are going to come across in science and in social studies, amoeba and words like that. So we're going to spend most of our time teaching academic words, and we're going to learn some strategies for doing that. But the one thing that teachers need to do is teach specific words. All right, so here's an activity that we're going to do. So you need a pencil and a piece of paper, and I want you to write in 3 columns at the top of your paper, basic, academic, and specialized. That's what we were just talking about. I want you to go there. I'm going to give you a minute to do that. You got your paper out? You need to be taking notes. If you haven't been doing that, back up, listen to me again, and write down some notes. Here we go. Basic, academic, and specialized activity. I'm going to read you a portion of a story called Flashy Fantastic Rainforest Frogs. It's an expository text, which means that it is factual information. And so I'm going to read you that. And while I read, I want you to write down 2, 3, or 4 words in the basic column that you think would be good vocabulary, that are basic words. And now what were basic words? Words that I don't have to spend a lot of time teaching because children are already going to know those words. Maybe I just need to talk about them a little bit. Then I want you to write down the academic words. These are words kids are going to see in print again. Words that I need to be teaching for them to understand the text that I'm reading. Words that they need to become familiar with so they can use them in their writing. And then there's those specialized words. Specialized words are what? Content-specific words. Words that I'm going to teach for them to understand the content that I'm teaching, but they may not see it in other places in the curriculum or in other places in their reading, in their general reading. Words that are very specialized to the content topic that I may be teaching at a particular time. Okay, so here's the story. Flashy Fantastic Rainforest Frogs by D.H. Patton. The disguise of the horned frogs also protects them from becoming food for larger animals. Many small frogs protect themselves by hiding too. Some have brown patterns that disguise them on tree trunks or among dead leaves. Glass frogs are hard to see on green leaves. Much of their skin has no color at all. It is sometimes hard to see where the glass frog ends and the leaf begins. A few rainforest frogs have a special way to avoid predators. They have big feet with webbing between the toes. Some also have flaps of skin on the sides of their bodies. To escape, the frog jumps in the air and spreads out its feet. The webbing and flaps act like wings and slow the frog's fall as it glides gently downward. When the frog reaches another tree, it can hang on with just one giant toe pad until it can grab with its foot. Poison dart frogs don't need to hide or escape. They hop fearlessly about on the forest floor during the day. Their bright colors warn predators, "Don't touch me." Only a few animals can eat them because their skin contains bitter-tasting chemicals. Some of these chemicals are very poisonous. Okay, you should have somewhere between 6 and 12 words written down on your paper, 3 or 4, 2 or 3 under basic, the same under academic, and the same under specialized. Okay, we're going to come back to that, so you need to just hang on to that, and we're going to come back and visit it in just a few minutes. All right. The other thing that students need to know is about levels of word knowledge. This is the way how students understand words, and in what way they understand words. So let's talk about this for a minute. There are 4 levels of word knowledge that have been identified. The first one is unknown words. These are words that students don't recognize. They don't have a concept for them. They've never heard the word orally. They've never heard it in print. I just came across a word like this just recently. I was talking with my daughter, and she said, "I am down to the last vestiges of my laundry soap." And I said, "I don't think I've ever heard that word before." It was an unknown word to me. I don't recall ever hearing it orally. I don't recall ever reading it. Well, she had read it in a book, and she had made it part of her vocabulary, and it means the last little bit, the end of, the vestiges, the end of something, the last little part of it. So it was a new word for me. I still haven't seen it in print. I know one meaning of it, so it's not an unknown word anymore, but it was just a little bit ago. All right, what about initial recognition? These maybe are words that students have seen or they've heard. Maybe they can pronounce it, but they don't really know the meaning. Maybe they know the word, but they don't know really much about it. Then there's partial word recognition. This is that students know the one meaning of the word and they can use it in a sentence. That's what vestiges is to me. I know one meaning of the word vestiges. I can use it in a sentence. I could probably spell it, but I only have partial word recognition. I don't have the next part, which is full word knowledge. That is, I know more than one meaning of the word, and I can use it in several ways, in different contexts. So full word meaning is when a student really has a good grasp of the word. Now, students may not reach full word knowledge for a lot of their vocabulary, and they're certainly not going to reach it with every word that they come in contact with. But when they do develop it, that they can use the word flexibly and use it in a lot of different contexts. So that's important to think about. What is the level of the word that the student understands? How does the student understand this word? Because that's going to tell me how I need to teach it and what I need to do. All right, we've got another activity. What I want you to do is on a piece of paper, I want you to write the word run. R-U-N, run. Just write that down. Run. Just write it down, the word run. Now I want you to use it in a sentence. Write a sentence down for the word run, whatever comes to your mind. All right. Now, I want you to use it in a different way. Use the word run differently than how you've used it currently. Okay? Use it another way. 3 sentences using the word run, all in a different context. What about one more? Can you do 4? Can you write 4 sentences with the word run? Okay, so maybe your first sentence was something like, I went on a run this morning. We all know what that means. We put on our tennis shoes, we went outside and we ran down the street, we jogged. Well, if you used it another way, maybe you said, I'm going to run the store for my dad. That would be a different way to use the word run. What about, I have a run in my hose? That would be a different way to use the word run. What about, I'm going to run the washing machine? All different ways to use the word run. That would take us to which level of word knowledge for the word run? Hopefully we have a full understanding. But you think about children approaching this. Maybe they have one understanding, so they would only have a partial understanding of this word, and we want to teach them that. Teach them a better way to do it. Okay, how can teachers expand vocabulary? We've talked about teaching specific words. Now we're going to talk about teaching word learning strategies. What are some word learning strategies that teachers can teach? Well, they can teach context clues. Teaching context clues. What does that mean? Well, context clues obviously is, do the words around us help us understand context clues? Students can learn a lot of words from context. If they come to the word they don't know, I need to teach children what to do when they come to words that they don't know the meaning of. So there's a lot of things that I can teach them about this, but these are the most effective ones. I can teach them to use context clues. Continue reading. Look at the words around it. Can you make sense of the word by the words around it? All right, if that doesn't work, then maybe they need to analyze the word parts. What does that mean? Analyze the word parts. Well, they need to look at the prefixes. They need to look at the suffixes. They need to, maybe they need to think about where the word might have come from. They need to think about other kinds of clues for helping them understand the words, prefixes and suffixes and such. So it's very important for the children to be able to look at the word and break it down and analyze. You know, if the word is, let's say, undo. Do I know what un means? Thinking about that. The last one is to check with a friend or with the dictionary. Now, a lot of times we send kids to the dictionary first, and that's not always the best place for students to find out the meaning of their words. Sometimes they need to do that last, after they've checked with a friend, asking the teacher, hey, do you know the meaning? Can you help me with the meaning of this word? Or asking one of their classmates if they know the meaning of the word. I don't know about you, but if I ever come to a word I don't know, the first place I go is not the dictionary. I usually use the context, think about the word, see if I can connect it to any other words that I know. And if neither of that works, the first thing I'm likely to do is say to my husband, honey, can you help me know the meaning of this word? I don't understand it. I don't know what it means. And he can generally do that. And if he can't, then I go to the dictionary. Okay, so we've talked about teaching specific words. We've talked about teaching word learning strategies. Now we're going to talk about fostering an interest in word learning. It's very important that teachers create for their students word consciousness. They're very conscious of words around them, and they're interested in the words. Modeling an interest in words. Coming across maybe a new word that you learned and saying, guess what? I learned a new word today. And talking about new words. Sharing books about words. There's all kinds of books that you can read that have to do with words. Find them, search them out. I think in your text there's a page with different kinds of books that you could choose that have to do with words. Call students' attention to words. Hey, look at this word. Isn't this interesting? Wow, look at the way this works. Highlight words of the day. I have a good friend who teaches kindergarten, and the first few weeks of school, she teaches her kindergartners the word relevant. She spends time teaching the word relevant. And she does it because, if you've ever worked with kindergartners or 5 or 6 year olds, their minds wander and they want to tell you stories that have nothing to do with the topic that you're talking about. So when that happens, you've got to be able to draw their attention back. So she spends time teaching them the word relevant. And she says they'll be in circle time and story time or whatever, and they'll all be talking about something, and some little kid will shout out, hey, I got a puppy this weekend. And she takes that opportunity to teach them the word relevant. Or she asks a question and they all raise their hand, and when she calls on one of them, they tell her something that doesn't apply. And so she's figured out that when she teaches them the word relevant, after about the 3rd week of school, when she's talked about that, is it relevant? Does it fit in the conversation? Does it go along with what we're talking about? About the 3rd week of school, she'll ask a question and little hands will go up, and she'll call on someone and they'll slowly put their hand down and say, I'm sorry, it's not relevant. They learned the word. Highlighting the words of the day. Posting words on the word walls. Having words up everywhere. Have students collect words from books. Looking through their books and collecting words. Share riddles, jokes, puns, songs, poems, because all of those are fun ways to play with words. So you want students to be able to do that and to get a feel for playing with those words. What should a good vocabulary lesson look like that includes explicit word instruction? Now, you know when I talk about this part, what does it look like? This is going to be the way you're going to critique that YouTube video. When you do that YouTube video, you're going to need to be able to say, this was a good lesson or this wasn't a good lesson, and you're going to need to talk about what you've learned in class that makes it a good lesson or not, and perhaps how the teacher could make it a better lesson, what parts she left out, or what parts she didn't include in the video that maybe she was going to do later. Okay, so this is that section. What should a good vocabulary lesson look like? All right, 1, it should use the word in several contexts, pronouncing it clearly. The teacher just doesn't throw a word out there and not use it in different ways. 2, it should provide a student-friendly definition. I was observing in a 3rd grade classroom. The teacher's teaching the word. She's teaching the word breeze. A student raises their hand. She says, does anybody know what breeze is? The student raises their hand and they said, I do. Breeze is, when I go outside and I can feel my hair move just a little bit. That's a breeze moving my hair. And the teacher said, no. because she didn't want to accept this student-friendly, kid-friendly definition. She wanted the book definition. She said a breeze is a gentle wind. Well, wow, what has she done? She's told the student they're wrong when they weren't. And she's created a situation where that child's not comfortable sharing instead of building that interest in words that we talked about and making children want to learn words. So provide a student-friendly definition. Associate the word with something visual or memorable. Pictures so that they can see it. Talking about how it connects. Maybe you've been on a field trip. Maybe it's something in the cafeteria. Maybe there's a way that you can connect it so that they have a memory of the word. We all know that when we connect to something, we learn it better. We understand it better. So that's what you're trying to do here. Show the word's relationship to some other words. Synonyms, antonyms, homonyms. How does the word relate? Other variations of the word, words that have those inflectional endings, ing endings, ed endings of the same word, using it and showing relationship to other words. Providing practice for students saying and using the word. Not just write the sentence 10 times or write these disconnected sentences with your 5 vocabulary words, but giving practice where they're actually having practice using and saying the words. All right, here's the activity. Go back to what we did before where you wrote down those words when I read the flashy, fantastic Rainforest Frog story. Out of that academic section, where you wrote the words in the academic section, I want you to do these steps with that word. Write the word down. Actually do this. Don't just follow through it in your head while I'm talking. Actually do it on a piece of paper. What is the word? Write it down. Use it in several contexts. Write it down. Write down your sentences. Use it in several contexts. Okay, what would be a student-friendly definition that you could use? Write that down. Okay, think of a way to associate it for the children visually or memorable, in a memorable way. What could you do? Could the students draw a picture? Could it be something silly? Could they connect it in a graphic organizer? What could they do? All right. How can you show its relationship to other words? What are other words that you could relationship with? What about provide practice for using the word? How would you allow opportunity? Write it down on a piece of paper. Okay, you may have to spend some more time with this slide. Think you can probably back up and watch it again and do it, but I'm going to move on. How do we assess students' vocabulary? How are we going to go about knowing what they've learned? Well, we all know the typical way of assessing vocabulary. Writing it down, providing the definition. This is the way that we teach the word 5 times each. Writing out the definitions. Well, maybe there's other ways to do it. Okay, so planning. Planning your words, letting students self-identify words that they don't know. That's one way. Also, by letting them self-assess words they don't know. Planning ahead so that you can provide them the words and allow the children to say, I don't know this word at all. Or, I've heard this word before, but I don't know the meaning. Or, I know one meaning of the word, and I can use it in a sentence. Okay, this goes back to what we talked about. This no word knowledge, initial word knowledge, partial word knowledge, full word knowledge. Letting the children say how they know the word and give them planning as you decide, as you assess what their vocabulary knowledge is. The other way is through monitoring. Observations. How are they using the words? Are they using it in their writing? Are they applying the vocabulary? Through conferencing. having conversations with the students about the words that they're learning. And then through evaluating. Rubrics, using rubrics to evaluate what they know. Quick writes, just having them pull out a sheet of paper at the end of a lesson and use the word in connected text. Maybe doing word sorts with it, grouping words together that make sense, or maybe doing visual representations of the word. So those are some ways that you can evaluate what they know. And then the last way to assess students' vocabulary knowledge is for you as the teacher to reflect on your effectiveness as an instructor. Reflect on your teaching. How could it be better? What could I do? How could I make this more memorable or visual for the students so that they remember it? So how do I assess the students' knowledge? Okay, so in order to get credit for this section of the course, which is worth 10 points, you need to bring your notes and all the activity sheets that you've done to class with you to receive credit for your participation in this class period. So when we meet on the 10th, I will expect that you will be able to pull out your notes and show them to me so that I can give you credit for listening to this lecture. I'm sorry that I'm having to do this way. I know it's not the best way, but it is what it is. So I hope that you've learned something, and again, reflect back on the email that I've sent in order for you to know what's going on in class. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.